Welcome, my friends, to Inside the Minds of Authors. I'm DC Gomez, and I'm thrilled you're joining me today for a fun conversation with a passionate author. We're kicking off the program, like it's our tradition, with a short reading from the feature book. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get started.
Hi, everybody. I am so delighted to be here with DC Gomez, and my name is Amy L. Bernstein, and I'm the author of this little tiny book called Wrangling the Doubt Monster, Fighting Fears, Finding Inspiration. It's a book that I wrote for creative people from all walks of life who struggle with self-doubt, and I'm really encouraging and inspiring every artist to go on and make their art and commit to their art and sustain a creative life despite the self-doubts that sometimes overwhelm us. So I'm reading a very brief excerpt from this book, and I want to make it clear that this isn't a workbook. It's not a guidebook. It's not a how-to book. It's not a deep sort of a philosophical treatise. It really is a lot of short bursts of inspiring prose, sort of with a touch of poetry. And it's the kind of book that any reader can dip in and out of for inspiration. In fact, I'm really thrilled that some people are keeping this book by their bedside as the kind of thing that they can just open up now and again or by the computer for inspiration. So I'll read you a really short little piece. Doubt is a story you tell yourself about yourself, almost like paddling on yourself. Once upon a time, I didn't think I could. I didn't think I should. I wasn't good enough to try. I didn't know enough to do. I was lesser than. You are full of stories, and your doubt story is only one among many. Turn to a clean page and begin again. Once upon a time, I leapt out into air and lived. I found the treasure I sought. I made something from nothing. I faced the world. I told everyone that I mattered.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Inside the Minds of Authors. I am so excited you guys are joining us today. I have a dear friend with us. We're going to talk about one of those topics that is so close to my heart, all about mindset. So I am excited. If you're new to the podcast, make sure to subscribe. You don't want to miss a single episode. We're here every week with new authors. So you want to make sure you subscribe so you can stay tuned and you love everything we have. And because you guys are here to talk to our author, we're going to get started. Hello, Miss Amy. How are you?
I am great, DC. Thanks for having me on.
I am so happy you're here. Every time you come, it's a lovely conversation. And congratulations on the new book. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's going to be released in January. It's available to pre-order for on Amazon now, and I'm really excited to share this with people really around the world.
So I need to know, because this is always the starting point, where did this idea come from? Because this is very vulnerable. Like, we're putting yourself out there. What made you decide to do it?
You are so right. And so this really comes so deeply from kind of my lived experiences as a creative person trying to step into a life as a full-time writer. And I have been networking and working with and coaching and conferring with writers and artists really around the world. And what comes up in conversation again and again among all of us is our doubt, right? Our doubt about our ability to do something well, to put our doubt about whether we should put something out into the world, our doubts about how vulnerable we really want to be and whether we have the talent that we want to summon up to sort of create the art that we envision, make the ideas in our head come true. And this is a very universal thing. And I think we live in a culture that celebrates so much success and sort of pretends to make everything look easy. And we don't talk enough about that more vulnerable, doubting side of ourselves that we live with even while we're making something new and trying to share it with the world. So I'm trying to come clean about this and help others feel open and willing to talk about it as well.
Negative mindset is something we don't want to talk about. Also,
Mhm.
professional jealousy is something people don't want to talk about. Like, we have the imposter syndrome, but we want to pretend it's not there. So I love it when you decided to put the book together. Did you had an audience in mind? Because I think authors, we always write for somebody. Who are you writing this book for?
I love that question. And yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, I think whenever we write a book, we're writing for ourselves on some level, right? So that's certainly true here. But I really am writing it because I'm a writer. I think of writers first. And I think of all the writers because I'm also a book coach. I think of all the writers I coach who are so in doubt about whether they can really put a book together. And so I really was writing it for all the aspiring authors and even published authors who are really hesitant to sort of keep up with this really difficult craft and have so many doubts about their ability to do so. But beyond that, it really does speak to creative people really across the board. Like I've talked to a number of entrepreneurs with whom this also resonates because starting a business is also a really risky creative thing to do. So anyone with a kind of a creative mindset, this book is really going to help to encourage them to go forward.
You mentioned this was this little book, not a workbook. Love the preface. Why not a workbook? What made you decide to make it very poetic?
When this started bubbling up out of me, I have written a lot of poetry, and somehow this kind of prose poem form just kind of bubbled out of me. And I realized that's what I really wanted to lean into. And I don't want to preach at people. I run a lot of workshops as it is, which involves, some aspects of teaching, and I love doing that. But in a book, I didn't want to do what a lot of other books are already doing, which is kind of try and tell people how to do things. You and I both know that there's about 1.5 million books out there telling writers how to write, telling artists kind of how to be artists, how to create your artistic practice or whatever. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to basically be that voice that kind of sits on the shoulder of any creative person and says, "You can do this. You can give yourself permission to do this. You should go ahead and do this." That's the voice that I wanted to be. And so it came out a little bit like poetry, but it's not like inaccessible. It's extremely accessible.
You mentioned the one word that I think triggers everybody to go, permission. I think for me, I read the book from Elizabeth Gilbert, Big Magic, and she's like, I'm going to give you permission to start writing. And I was like, I don't think I realized that I needed permission, but I needed permission. I needed somebody to tell me that yes, you should do it. So the fact that you're that voice in a very eloquent way, that person on the shoulder telling you you're going to be okay. I am so excited. You said people already reading it. What are you getting back? What is the feedback about it?
The feedback is really wonderful, like Allison K. Williams saying, "This is that little book you wanna dip in and out of." And, even a serial entrepreneur telling me, "I wish I'd had this book 20 years ago because this is the kind of encouragement that really would have helped me in some of my business successes and failures." Writers are feeling seen and heard, which is really what it's all about. It's funny that you mentioned Elizabeth Gilbert because I've been trying to get her attention to get her to blurb the book, but you know how hard that is, right? Because it's like, this is right in your wheelhouse, Elizabeth Gilbert. You should blurb this book because it's really going to be right in your align with your own values and what you say to writers. And please, so Elizabeth Gilbert, if you're listening to DC Gomez, blurb my book. So yes, the reception has been positive. I'm really hopeful that when it's published in January by Bancroft Press, we're really going to find that's just it. It's resonance. It's that sense of that sort of shock of recognition. Like, oh yes, I've been thinking these things. I've been afraid to say them out loud. You put them into words. I'm hoping for that and really to connect with creative people around these conversations.
It is such an opening of doors to people who are completely feeling unheard, like you said. I totally think Elizabeth needs to pump your book because she's absolutely amazing. I had an opportunity to actually watch her in a workshop as well, and she's mind blowing. It is those opening of doors for everyone, but it is talking about resilience and it's talking about the power of the mind. As the coach, because we're going to jump into that right now, you get to see the most vulnerable side of authors and creatives. How do you motivate them to look past those doors and be like, okay, you can? Because 90% of the time, the negative voices are busy in our head. How do you get them to stop listening to those?
Right, and I'm so glad you asked me that. So the best coaches, and I'm not necessarily saying I'm the best coach, but the best coaches are really focused on helping that person recognize the potential and the power that's in themselves. I can sort of yell at you, even in a positive way, all I want and say, "You can do it. You're good at this. You've got the ability. You can do this. You can do this on the field. You can do this to a writer." Really, what has to happen here is that artist has to believe inside themselves that they can do this, that they can sort of go forward and with this really difficult work that they're trying to give birth to. So what I do is I think the word nurture really works well
Mm.
here because nurturing is about helping that person see what they're made of. It's not just sort of telling them what they're made of because that it really all starts with self-recognition and it has to come from within us, right? It's our own passion to create and our ability to believe in our passion to create. And when we're talking about giving permission, you have to give yourself permission to step into your artistry, to step into your craft instead of letting yourself being held back by doubts or by what the culture tells you about is frivolous. So this is all key. So in coaching, I really am being both an accountability partner, but also very much trying to nurture that author to see what they're capable of themselves. And little by little they do. And it's very exciting when they take that journey.
You have a lot of different pieces of your business running together. When do you find time to write? Let's talk about this one. As the writer, I need to know. When are you ready?
Okay. Okay, so I believe in being really real. So I will tell you that the fiction side of me, which is where I really started about 5 years ago, is like, I'm just going to write novels. This is what I'm going to do. And I did do that. That has taken a bit of a back seat, but it's a it's a series of choices that I am making. I have a very lively weekly Substack where I write about intersection about doubt and creativity. That fills me up. It's really wonderful. I love doing it, but it's a weekly deadline that I've imposed on myself. And my book coaching clients, I put a lot of my time and energy into, and sort of other things related to this, a fair amount of teaching and workshops that I have to prepare for. And so I'm having this conversation with myself about what does my own writing mean to me now? And to what extent do I want to prioritize that? Or am I taking a really long view and saying, I know I'm going back to this. And I think that sometimes you do have to have that conversation with yourself. And I will simply add that I do have a completed novel that I need to revise, and so I'm finding time in my schedule to do some of that work, which is so important, and that's sort of keeping my hand in. And then I'm writing short stories now and again to make sure that I'm still putting fiction on the page, right? And if it's not a novel, maybe I can at least do a short story, but it's choices, and we make those choices, and we have to really interrogate ourselves and say, "Is this the balance you want?" And if it's not, you need to change it. So that's where that is.
You mentioned something that to me touched me very close to my soul is, am I fulfilled? What is it that is making me smile? Because we're creative individuals. We're not
Right.
pumping charts and graphs and a paper. Like you're not doing Excel 24/7.
I can barely read a spreadsheet, so yeah,
You're creating. It is the art
right,
of creation that comes into the page, but
right.
are you nurturing yourself, as you said to your clients, and are you truly giving yourself the grace to say, you know what? When the story comes, I'm going to embrace it? Or is it all just the business? So I'm loving the fact that you're very honest with yourself and
Mhm.
keeping it real with yourself. So that's amazing.
Yeah, well, I made a commitment to myself some years ago when I really started doing all of this full time and, left the traditional working world that I wasn't going to do things I didn't love and didn't feel passionate about because that was the whole point, right? And I do check in with myself about that. And I can give you a concrete example. For a couple of years now, I've been putting out sort of resource information oriented reels on TikTok and Instagram, which are basically to help writers in particular with aspects of the craft and dealing with different things that writers go through. So it's been very kind of helpful, information oriented. It hasn't been sales or self promotion oriented. I've done that for about 2 years now, and I've come to this point where I'm like, what am I getting from this? Am I getting enough from this to keep doing it? Or is that something I could pull the plug on and put that energy into something else? And I think we do have to ask those questions now and again and kind of recalibrate because I work with so many people who feel that if they're not doing 15 different things, they're not doing anything. And that's just not necessarily true. We do need to find the focus and we need to find the joy in the focus. I think it's really important to do that.
There is a balance to things. Somebody explained it even better. Like balance is trying to do 50-50. It's like I like more flow. There's a flow in a season that comes to everything, and understanding where that flow comes in is even better. So you're preaching and living your values, which I think is amazing. Because sometimes as creators, we tell all the right things, we have all the right advice. So when people ask, "Well, do you do that?" I was like, "Well, no, I don't have time."
No, no, not
So
really, not really. Yeah, let's just say I'm trying. I'm trying. That doesn't mean that it's not completely aligned, but I am trying.
I love it. Switching to the nonfiction world as a writer, how different was that process for you? Because you have been writing novels and fiction for a while. This is what you've been publishing, and now you're going, I'm to switch some gears. How was that process?
Well, that's an easy transition for me for a couple of reasons. I was a journalist for a number of years in print and public radio, and so I'm really used to that kind of writing. I also was in communications in government and nonprofits for many years. That's all nonfiction, very intense, detailed, technical, nonfiction type writing. So I'm really comfortable in that world, which is why I predominantly coach nonfiction writers writing creative, narrative nonfiction, selectively some memoir, but nonfiction. So I'm really comfortable in that world, and my weekly Substack is basically a nonfiction essay every week. So I love doing that, and I'm pleased that Wrangling the Doubt Monster came out in a different voice, this sort of hybrid prose poetry voice with a sense of urgency and trying to really connect with that reader. And I will also add that the publisher commissioned illustrations for this book, which bring this like kind of joyful levity and warmth to a subject that's hard for us to talk about, which is, I feel inadequate, right? So I have to say the illustrations in this book are just a fabulous way of feeling comfortable when you're kind of holding this book in your hands and looking through it. So nonfiction, I love it. I want to do more of it. I'm just trying to decide what and when I'm going to have the time for that.
It sounds like you're coming back home. And it's so exciting to see it because you automatically light up. There's this passion that comes across. And there's always been a passion to everything you write. So I don't want to say to people, oh, there wasn't a passion. There's always been a passion. You just have this extra glow that shows so much more. You're having a blast. You are enjoying your process and everything you do, and the works are coming out very beautifully. I'm glad that you're doing this and I'm glad you're taking your time. So amen to that, Hannah.
You make it sound so easy and not quite that easy. That's how it shows up. And, if I could add a point, I think one of the things that writers and other creative people are stressed by these days is I alluded to it earlier because of the way social media works and everything else. Everything comes across as so perfect and effortless. And then when we're struggling, we think, well, something's wrong with me because this is hard and have to start over and I'm making mistakes and it's not good and it's not good enough. And look at that. Everyone else, like, they've done it so brilliantly. We have to remember that everybody has that struggle and that process and that uncertainty. You just don't see it. You're seeing this sort of imitation of perfection that people are sharing at the end. But even the most famous writers go through a lot. They go through many drafts, they go through many years, they go through doubts. And so we have to remember that we feel very alone in this. And we're not really alone, but it does feel that way. And this book hopefully can bridge that gap a little bit.
We're judging ourselves by the curated version of the things we see on social media.
Yes, exactly.
It is
Exactly.
fun and exciting, but you have to remember it. We don't get to see the droughts and tribulations. You
Mm,
don't get to see the rough drafts. You get to see the curated version of the business they're trying to portray, which is
that's right.
a fun thing to remember.
Yes, absolutely.
So, dear, book comes out in January.
Mhm.
Need to know, how do you feel? Like, this is
Yeah,
new
up and
book.
down, up and down. Like there are the days where like this book is going to be connect with everybody. It's going to be just great and really popular, and it's I'm going to sell actual copies beyond 2 digits, right? And then there's the days when you're no, I mean it's not going to fly. It's not going to. But look, I have a terrific publisher, and he really believes in it. That makes a difference. I know many people are out there self-publishing, and it's a wonderful, exciting road to go down. It's also a difficult road. I'm really grateful that this book is being traditionally published. I have that support. And look, I'm going to hope for the best. And it's all about, at the end of the day, me connecting with creative people who want to have these conversations in a real way. I'm looking forward to doing a big workshop around that in my town of Baltimore at the end of October. It's the excitement of sort of stepping out, which I actually really do enjoy. So looking forward to any attention that comes my way. We could put it that way.
I'm celebrating. I'm sending cheers and blessings because it's going to be great. It's a conversation we all need to start having and be very honest and truthful with where we're at in our journey. I think to some extent feel ashamed that we're now where everybody else used to be. I think I'm working on that post for the week. I'm like, where am I at? I'm a new book. What are we going to do? How are we going to handle it? And I think is being honest and real at this moment. So I love it.
That's so true.
So are you working on your next one? What's next for you? What do you have? Because you have a lot of stuff going on. What can we expect? Tell us.
Yeah, I'm a bit in sort of episodic mode right now. I mean, between my Substack, between a significant client load with my book coaching clients, between the workshops that I'm lining up and some other things that I'm doing kind of between, I'm kind of full up right now. But if Wrangling the Doubt Monster is well received, I do have some ideas about what can follow that. But I don't think I should say anything out loud yet, not because I'm going to jinx it, but because it's not quite baked enough. like everyone else, I continue to submit fiction. I continue to submit all kinds of work. I mean, I have skin in the game every day. It's all part of this thing we call trying to lead a creative life and take those creative risks. And you have to accept the rejection alongside the success and just dust yourself off every day and go out and do it again.
You mentioned rejection. I want to make sure. Usually I ask authors what advice they would give. As a coach, I actually want to know, what do you tell your clients when they're dealing with rejections? Because that hits home in a whole different level that sometimes we're not prepared for.
Right. Well, most of my clients are in the process of trying to write a book or write a book proposal, so they haven't been rejected yet, right? But I do talk with many other writer and coach friends and others in other disciplines in theater and so forth. And rejection, I've lived through a great deal of it and I've learned, I have to say, it's a phenomenal teacher. And that's not just a cliche, it's true. If you can't learn from the universe telling you no, if you can't learn from what it feels like to fail, then what can you learn from it? And it is important to view it as a learning opportunity. In other words, rejection really is the beginning of something. It's not just the end of something. It's not just a death. And while it's perfectly fine to take that moment to kind of feel down, to feel sorry for yourself, to feel like you're not connecting, what's wrong with your work, it's okay to take that moment because that's natural. We're going to feel that. I'm not saying don't feel that, but you have to recognize we take it so personally. And what's going on in the publishing world right now, whether we're talking about literary magazines, poetry magazines, traditional book publishers, hybrid book publishers, literary agents, no matter what piece of this spectrum you're talking about right now, it's not about you. The market is tremendously kind of oversubscribed. I just wrote an essay for janefreeman.com about the fact that acceptance rates are hovering around 1%. And that's because thousands and thousands of people are submitting material, trying to pass through a very tiny eye of a very tiny needle. When you look at a literary magazine, they only have so much room in a given issue. They may be able to take 4 or 6 pieces, maybe more, but maybe not a lot more. So it's natural that you just can't automatically thread the eye of that needle every time that you want to. So it's not about you. It's about circumstances way beyond your control. And you need to put your rejection in a broader context and recognize that it's not judgment on your merit. It's circumstances that are complex and outside your control, and they're economic, and they're about the publishing industry and a lot of things that are going on there right now.
That is an incredible reminder for everyone because sometimes I think we take it personal. Like, oh
Mm,
my God, they don't like me. Instead of understanding that piece might not fit with that issue of the month or
right.
what they're looking for the market. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And Miss Amy, we need to know, where can we learn more about you, your coaching business, your books, and also where they can get this book that's coming out. Tell us.
So a great place to start for me is simply my author website, and it's amywrites.live, just AMYWRITES.live. That's LIVE. And you can read more about Wrangling the Doubt Monster and all my other work there. You can learn about my book coaching from there. And you can pre-order Wrangling the Doubt Monster right this very minute on Amazon. And I think most people know how to navigate their way there, but you can check out my website for more information.
I love it, madam. Congratulations. So before you leave us, are you ready for the lightning round?
Oh, let's try. I don't know if I've had enough coffee, but we're gonna give it a try.
Easy peasy. Let's not think too much about this. Let's go. Cold drinks are hot.
Oh, it depends on the season because I love iced coffee and I love hot coffee. That's not
Okay.
fair.
Giving you both. I'm going to go with that. Too easy. Sweet or sour?
Oh, sour. I'm not a sweet person so much.
I'm a sweet girl. It's all good. Beach or lake?
Beach.
Ebooks or print?
I'm so agnostic. I read a lot of ebooks. It's easier on my eyes, but who doesn't love a great book between the spines? I refuse to choose among my children.
I like that. That's a really good way of putting it. So here's a different one. Let's see how you do with this one. What fictional character best describes your personality? And it can be in anything.
Wow. I wish you'd given me some time with that one. You know, people have pointed out to me that the women that I write as protagonists in my novels, they go, "Oh, that's you." And I'm like, "No, beg your pardon. This is a fictional character. This isn't me." And I think that I have to reluctantly confess that the irascible, sort of no nonsense former journalist turned to detective in one of my novels is probably far too close to me than I want to admit. So I'm going to be that character in the book who's passionate, but doesn't sort of put up with a lot of frilliness and nonsense and too much sentiment. So that's going to be me.
I like it, especially if you can find one of your books that connects with you, that's even better.
Yeah.
Miss Amy, it's been a pleasure having you. Do you have any closing remarks for us?
First of all, DC, let me say how much I appreciate what you do, not only on your own behalf as a writer, but on behalf of the writing community. It does not go unnoticed. I'm so grateful and so respectful for all the hard work that you put into this and what you do to lift up other authors. Let me thank you and congratulate you for that. And I would just say that I would remind every writer or aspiring writer who listens to your podcast that writing is a very lonely business, but that doesn't mean that you are alone. Will embrace you, and I do everything I can to try and embrace writers and their goals and aspirations and, make sure that you spend time with folks who are going to support your vision and not try to tear you down. I think that's important for writers to remember.
It is such a beautiful message. And I think sometimes we forget that while we write by ourselves, we're not alone in this community. So thank you, madam. A pleasure. Congratulations on the upcoming book. I'm doing a little dance for you. It's going to be amazing. And to our listeners, don't forget, go ahead and subscribe. Go out, check out Miss Amy. Check out some stuff. You are going to love what she has putting out there. The book comes out. It's on pre-order now. And we'll be back next week with another amazing author. Bye, guys.